practice where people come and tell you things. And as you're listening to them telling you things, you're going, that's not true. That's not true. That's a lie. That's a myth. That's been debunked. That's no longer accepted practice. No, no, right? I don't know if that happens to you, but
I mean, come on. I'm a nutritionist. Of course that happens to me literally every day.
okay. Well, I have to say that, I mean, as a kid, I remember being like 6, 7 years old, pulling off the shelf books like this about animals and reading them. I didn't get all of it, but I was reading and I was learning about, and so I just take for granted this thing of, well, I know stuff about animals. And it's when I have a conversation with the general public or whatever who tell me, with absolute conviction, lies about animals that they 100% believe are true. So they're not lying to me. They're not trying to,
right.
be deceptive, but they are believing something that is patently nowhere in the literature as being true or anything. And it's this huge trend. And I used to see it so commonly in the zoos, where as a behaviorist, I'm sitting there watching, assessing the animal's behavior. I'm taking down a whole ethogram and doing research or whatever, right? The field work stuff. And you listen to the conversations that people are having. It's like, Mummy, why is the such and such animal doing this? And then Mummy goes, well, and then makes up absolute tripe about what may or may not be happening. And it's definitely not the truth. And half the time they don't even get the species right. So they're referring to things that aren't even that animal. And you're just like, even if you didn't know, there's a sign 4 meters further down the thing, right? This is not an unusual. If you don't know, go and find out. You've got a curious child who wants to learn. Go give them the information. You've got someone in zoo uniform standing there with a clipboard. Oh, excuse me. I was just wondering if you could happen to tell my child, right? So and now I see it all the time in Pet World as well, right? Pet World isn't a shop. It's like the world of people who have pets, right? In Petland. So, I hear all the time, oh, cats and dogs, they only see in black and white. Yeah, my dog eats grass because she wants to throw up, and so that's what's happening. My cat is like every cat on the planet. They all just hate water. There's nothing you can do about that. Like there's all these myths that come out of people telling me stuff about animals. I'm like, no.
Okay, wait. So all of those things you just said are myths. I'm right. And yet I've definitely heard most of, if not all of those as truth before. Can you talk about the grass one? Sorry, it's like nice and breezy, but it's doing lovely things to my hair. Can you dive into the grass one? Yeah. So if an animal is eating grass, it's not because they're feeling sick.
Okay. It might be that, but it's not always that. So grass can act as an irritant, right? It's the same as, well, what I've heard, right? I have never suffered from bulimia, but I believe if you throw your fingers down the back of your throat and tickle the back of your tonsils, you'll stimulate some kind of ability to throw up. Okay, so that's effectively what they're trying to do with the grass blades. They're tickly, they're an irritant. They can't chew them down into a little green paste because they don't have molar teeth to do that. So the grass is going in and sort of being this sort of knotty mess, and it irritates to help a purging motion, so that something that's in the stomach that the dog or cat has realized, oh, that shouldn't be there, I'd like to get rid of it, can come out because they don't have fingers to put down their own throat, right? So grass is that mechanism. So that is something that can happen from time to time, but the whole world of dogs and cats eating green things, and so that could be herbs, grasses, sedges, moss, flowers, weeds, that whole, the palette is enormous, and they're doing it for self-medication more often than they're doing it as a fingers down the throat equivalent. So they're getting nutrients, beneficial active compounds from the plants. They're satisfying the need for whatever's lacking in their body, and they go, well, I know how to find that. It's not ever in my dinner bowl because mum doesn't give it to me. It's not in my dog or cat food. But when I go for a walk, I can find it. So I'm going to have some when we go on a walk, and let's hope that mum and dad don't pull my lead away so I can't get it in time. So I better go for it really quickly and try. So it's a challenge for them.
So what you're saying is if your dog is eating plants on a walk, you really shouldn't be stopping them.
Right. If you know for sure that that is a toxic plant for your dog, then yes, bring them away from danger. But it's usually the toxic plants are the house plants, because they're the ones that have evolved separately from our animals. When our dogs and cats live side by side with a plant, there isn't that toxic shock thing. So cats and lilies is a really big no-go, right? Well, I don't allow lilies in my house or in my garden because my cats are probably smart enough not to do it. But what if they're not? And I'm not watching them all the time, so I just don't have them there. So that would be a situation where I would remove them from that scenario. Right. But out on your walk, dandelions, normal grass, like that kind of stuff, it's not a problem. It's medicine.
We have a couple people chiming in live saying, hi, good morning. Thanks for the information. Good morning, everyone. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I'm here in Virginia, so it's 9:30 a.m. and not a cloud in the sky. Penny, you're quite on the opposite side of things.
Yeah, it's an overcast, boring day in the UK.
So let's dive into another one of these, because this is really interesting, and I think the kind of bigger point here is humility. Like having some humility in terms of what we actually know about our pets. There's a lot that is misunderstood. And I think when we get these sort of ingrained beliefs based on hearsay, that can actually cause more harm than good. So what would be another instance of this where you feel like it's actually this commonly held belief is causing more harm than good?
Where it definitely causes more harm than good is that pets being like patted on the head. So if you're meeting a dog or meeting a cat, and even if it's your own, you got to remember, from their perspective, your hand is coming down like this great big thing above their head, in front of their eyes, in the zone that they're like, well, hang on a minute, what the heck is that? Don't do that. Don't go for on top of their head. They have no idea if they're safe. And the reason I say this is an important one is because if you or your children or people, right, there's a risk of being bitten. Like it just is, because the dog's not going to want that to happen. They like to have something presented to them just under their nose level so that they can go forward and investigate. So you hold your hand and do it this way around, because if they do get a bite, the bite glides off your hand, right? Whereas if you hold it that way up, the bite's going to get your hand. So you've got a risk there. So you always present your hand in reverse like this, like as if you're going to have your hand kissed by some, Prince Charming, right? So hold your hand out like that. Don't shove it in front of their face. Bring it to some level of proximity, and then allow them to come forward and keep your hand still. People, as soon as the dog starts to move forward or the cat starts to move forward, and people are like, yeah, here it is. It's like, no, don't help them. They don't need your help reaching it. They want your patience to let them feel safe to investigate. And then they do a little sniff and they go, okay, now it's fine. I know who you are. I feel safe. And now when you go to pat them, don't take your hand away and pat them on the head. Use your hand and use under the chin here, around the back of the ear like this, on their shoulder, something on the bib, maybe if they let you do the bib, right? These are the places that feel safe, and then you can go for a nice swipe down the side. But the thing that, I suppose some of it comes from when we have strong trust with our animals, they're comfortable to allow us to do that. So we can start sort of at the nose and swipe down, right? But that's because your family, right? You don't run up to a perfect stranger and give them a bear hug, but you run up to your mum and give her a big bear hug because she's your mum. And it's the same with, so people look at other people with their own dogs and go, oh, look, they just patted him from the head. That's the normal way of doing it. No, that's an intimate way of doing it. The way to do it that is comfortable for animals is, as I just described, allow the animal to say, I'm comfortable with this, and now we can go forward. And there won't be a risk of a bite because you've respected their preferences. It's exactly the same with cats. They're more likely to, shred you than bite you straight away. But the bite will come too if you don't get it. Do you know what I mean? So just avoid that. And then you've got an injury. The animal's upset. You've broken trust in that relationship. No one wins in that. So the misconception of, pat them on the head, no.
Can you speak to, this is sort of a bit of a pivot, but can you speak to, it's coming to mind because I heard it recently. When we talk about raw feeding, we just got a comment from Michelle, which drives me crazy, is people, mostly guys, who thump the dog on their side right over their ribs when they say hello. Oh man, this resonates with you too, Penny. Why is that so bad?
Please don't thump you. I mean, yeah, right? That kind of like, oh, good dog. It's like, ow. You got to remember, they were a lot smaller than we are. They don't want to be banged around like they're in a pinball machine, right? If you want to get more vigorous, like a sort of this kind of scrunching thing, that gets down into the fur and on the skin and feels a bit massagey, right? But to this kind of thumping and, the same thing, pat them on the head. It's like, do you like being patted on the head like that? Because I don't. Like, that's just, it rattles your brains and, yeah, no, please don't do that.
Well, thanks for the comment, Michelle. Okay, so the direction I was headed was with raw feeding. One thing that I heard recently, and we've heard it a lot of times before, is that raw feeding, you run the risk of transferring diseases or, bacteria, pathogenic bacteria from the animal's mouth.
The myth that raw food is dangerous. Raw food is going to make them sick.
Well, specifically, though, as it pertains to transferring to humans. So I've heard this both with like, I don't want to feed my dog raw because then they're going to lick me. They're going to lick my kids. And then that bacteria from raw meat is going to get on us. I've also heard this about like picking up their poop. Like, I don't want to pick it up because can you speak to that a little bit? And then I'm going to send this video to the person who was telling me. It was actually one of my sisters.
You throw me in the deep end. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so no, that doesn't happen. I don't know about you, but when I eat my food, I don't keep half of it in my mouth to then smear on the fork the next time I put my fork in. When the food goes in, right, you swallow it, and it's not there anymore. And then we've got dental hygiene, and so if you're feeding your dogs raw food, it's going in, like dogs swallow before they chew, like it literally disappears down the chute, never to be seen again, right? And then if you're feeding them raw meaty bones as part of their diet, then their mouth is going to be kept clean because all of that biting through the hard material is scraping stuff off the tooth and getting rid of that. You've got to remember that their saliva is totally different from ours to cope with what's going in their mouth and their microbiome. The stomach acid that they have is so much stronger than ours, so it's going to kill any pathogen and bug that's going to possibly be in the meat that would affect us.
Which is why they can eat raw and we can't, right?
Right. And so as a result of that, it's not going to have E. coli in the poop on the other end because it's already been killed halfway through in the stomach. Yes, it's, poop. Nobody really loves picking up poop, let's be real, right? But, I mean, are you going around with your fingers doing it and then thinking, oh, there's something on my fingers, I better lick that off? No, nobody's doing that. No one looks
Well, hopefully you're using good hygiene anyway, right? Like if you're doing that, no matter what your dog eats. Okay, so my response to my sister, hers wasn't about the poop, but it was about the mouth. My response to her was about really, and and obviously I learned this, from everything you teach, when we feed kibble, they literally can't break down those carbohydrates. So kibble is mostly, over 50% carbohydrates. And unlike humans, where our digestion starts in the mouth, we can start breaking down the carbohydrates with the enzyme amylase. Our pets don't have that. So the carbohydrates are literally sitting on their teeth. And what's going to happen, right? We know the kind of, the old adage of like, brush your teeth after you're eating sugar because they're going to rot. Like that's literally what happens. And so now you have an oral microbiome that is really out of balance, and you have the plaque buildup and the stinky breath, right? If that's not an indicator of nastiness happening in the mouth, I don't know what is, right? And so we know that literally what's happening, it's not just what they're eating or the bacteria and what they're eating, it's what is actually happening in their oral microbiome. And that's more of what we need to be concerned about in the long term of it, because that is the bacteria that's actually sitting there. That's what, they're going to lick your face, and then you're going to be like, oh, my cheek stinks. Like, that's not pleasant. That's because they're not eating that species appropriate diet. So Penny, did I do a good job explaining that?
Yes, you did. Very good. Yeah, cats don't have amylase at all, so no carbohydrates for cats, right? And dogs, they have the amylase, but it's secreted down in the stomach, right? Not up here in the mouth. So you're quite right. The carbohydrates just shouldn't be in that. Most carbohydrates should not be in their diet, right? Refined grains and all that kind of stuff. No. So the carbohydrates that are good for a dog are your vegetables of bright color, fruit of bright color, right? Which should take up about 10% of their bowl. And those things are not really going to cause that sugar buildup, because it's not the refined, claggy, glue type of carbohydrate that sticks. And yeah, so having the bone or some kind of chewing, cleaning thing at the end, like we would go and brush our teeth after sugar, is going to maintain that. And like you say, the test is like, it's like, oh, have you got dragon breath, my darling? Please go over there. Or it's like, you're right here and you're breathing on me, and you just smell like my best friend. That's fine. This is like, you can tell by the whiff of the, exhalation, whether it's a good time to have a kiss or not.
All right, so we've thrown a few out the window. Is there one more that you want to address? Because I know you had a lot on your list in terms of these common misconceptions that we have about our pets.
So the black and white one's really common, like that pets only see in black and white. I don't think that's a dangerous misconception. It's not like you might get bitten or, some of the other things that we've talked about. Another one is that, cats only purr when they're happy. So that might be one to mention. Cats, of course, do purr when they're happy, so that's a great sign. But they also will purr as a self-comforting thing. So if they're injured, if they're in shock, they can often initiate the purr mechanism themselves as a sort of a security blanket, as sort of a child maybe sucking their thumb, or us going into the under the covers in bed and just going, it's all too hard. It's a comfort mechanism. And in actual fact, the vibrational effect of that purring frequency accelerates the healing process in cats. So they're doing it for comfort, but they're also doing it to heal. So you might find a cat, and if you are looking, you might find a cat who's like out on the streets or injured or hiding under a bush or something like that, and they're purring. That doesn't mean necessarily that they're happy where they are right now. This might be, I've been hit by a car and I've retreated and I'm purring to try and help myself recover. So you'd be looking at signs like, how big are the eyes? Pain makes the eyes go really large. For example, you would look at cowering position. Where are the ears? Where are the whiskers? Are the whiskers hanging really low? Or are they, sprightly sort of against the cheeks? Like there are signs you can look at to see, is this a cat that's happy and purring, or is a cat that's in distress and purring?
That's very fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely did not know that, and haven't even heard that was a thing. So that's really important to know. And gosh, it just makes me think about, again, like how much we don't know, and how much that lack of knowledge can, at best, the lack of knowledge is getting in the way of us connecting as well as we could with our pets. And at worst, it's potentially doing harm.
Yeah, I mean, at the very best end of the scenario, you just hear ridiculously funny things. So the I don't know, however these things permeate into the consciousness of the general public or the zeitgeist of this is what animals are and do and think, they can actually be hilarious. So there is that side of things. And you got to understand, animals might not be everybody's thing. So I give people grace when they don't know, right? But where it becomes a problem is when we have what we think is truth, or we have what we think is knowledge, and we use that as our foundation for then making choices. And so this whole thing of raw food is dangerous for pets. Therefore, the food that I choose to give them is highly processed, trash food, no nutrients, addictive, all the rest of it, right? And now they're dying at half their lifespan. That to me is a problem. That misconception needs to be corrected so that we can actually do our pets a service of looking after them appropriately. And that's one example, but there are so many that have that false foundation that then mean that we make the mistakes. And every person that I have worked with has had a misconception somewhere that has resulted in them, out of love, but unintentionally, making bad choices for their pets that have affected their health, their welfare, and their longevity. So it's I guarantee you, and I'm not perfect either, I'm still learning too, but I guarantee you every pet parent on this planet is making a mistake somewhere based out of a misconception because it wasn't taught appropriately or was never taught, for example. Like, how many people have to take an exam before they adopt a pet? Not very many. So we go in blithely thinking that we know all the things when actually there's a lot more to learn. And to your point, being humble to say, do you know what? I'd love to be a pet parent, or I'd love to be a better pet parent than what I am right now. I think I know some stuff, but I'm willing to let go of those beliefs if I find out a truth and then act accordingly. So maybe I can invest a little bit of time to go find out. And that can be anywhere of 1,000 places. I'm not saying that people have to come and talk to me, but you can watch Google videos, you can watch documentaries about animals, you can read books about animals, you can go and talk to zookeepers who are specialists. Like, there's a million ways that you can just ask a question. And anyone who loves animals will be the first person to say, okay, let me tell you some animal things, because there's no better topic, right? So you're never going to get fobbed off with, oh, that's a stupid question, why are you bothering me? No, people are going to say, yes, let's talk about that.
Well, if folks are left with more questions about maybe common misconceptions you've heard, we actually have our live Q&A starting in 6 minutes. So we have to go pop off and go join our live Q&A. So this is for Rejuvenate Our Membership. If you are a member, please join us. The link, we just sent it to you in an email about an hour ago, and it's also in your portal. So this can be related to literally any question, support, helping you get unstuck. Also, if you have specific questions about this last month's content where we really dove into detoxification, there's definitely a lot that people learned during that month. You can join in and ask those questions. And just a little sneak peek, next month, we're going to be diving more into nutrition, and not just like your basic feed your pet raw, eat more unprocessed foods. If you're a human, we're going to really be going beyond the basics. So that's just a little sneak peek if you were like, oh, wow, like I learned a lot today, definitely want to keep it going. So keep your eyes and ears open for more details about that coming soon. And we will see you guys on our live in just a few minutes. And we'll be back for another coffee chat next week. Okay, bye everyone.